What you do is what Yehuda taught me to do. You switch from defense to offense.
100%. I think, Ian, the world doesn't know how to deal, with a successful minority, going back to anti-Semitism. And we've been so good living in diaspora, in America and England, and caring about. And no matter what, we are always shown the back and reminded, you're not really welcome here. That's number one. Number two, the world doesn't understand. It's hard for them to see a Jew in an F-35. It's hard for them to see a Jew in an elite unit like Stav and Duvdevan. They don't understand why there's an Israeli flag on a tank, because they're used to their grandparents saying, oh, remember those Jews who lived where my grandparents lived in Feuchtwagen or Munich? And then we fucking killed them. We took them out of their house and we put them in concentration camps, and that wasn't enough. We gassed them. And they dared 6 years later to build a country, and a successful country, and an army, and to win.
Yehuda, thank you so much for joining me today. We've been talking about this for a while. I'm so excited to actually have you on, and what an amazing day to do it.
Likewise, thank you for having me. I remember we met at the first time at the shul in Nashville.
Yes.
And I said, who's that guy? And I'm like, I know who that guy is. That the famous video of I think you have already a few videos, but I think you have a famous video that always makes me proud, where you talk about the Jews. Yes, the Jews, not the Jews. Something I forgot the title of the video, but it's just for me it's a proud moment of a Jew, of what it means to stand for what you believe in, and here we are in this crazy, happy, sad day, and thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you, and watching you and all your work and everything you do. When I first met you, you were with a bunch of IDF reservists, and just speaking with you and the stuff you do makes making videos on YouTube seem a little silly. So thank you so much for coming on, and what an amazing day to actually have this discussion. I feel like we've been stepping towards it, this idea of whether there's going to be a peace agreement. When Trump first announced this, I had mixed emotions. I was excited, obviously, because I think getting the hostages home has always been goal number one. They've been there for over 2 years in the worst of circumstances. Those who have been lucky enough, if you want to call it lucky, to even survive this time, because, of course, there's also dead hostages that they're supposedly going to be releasing. But we're here, and it looks like hostages are being released, which is incredible. It's obviously a moving story. We're recording this early in the morning on Monday in American time, so more news will come out through the day. But just give me a summary of what this day feels like to you, and also just Israelis who have lived through this day by day, who know many of the people who are in the depths of Gaza being released. How does all of this feel?
It's a good question. I've asked myself walking today to Kikar Chatufim, to the hostage square, and you know, I'm someone who's used to observe a lot, and honestly, Ian, there are parts of me that was extremely proud as a Jew, as an Israeli, what it means. It was a celebration of our core values, who we are. You know, even if it took us 2 years, we don't give up. We don't give up. Every Motzei Shabbat, sometimes every Thursday, hundreds of people came to that square. There were people who were demonstrating daily. We didn't continue with our lives. We did on a logistical way, on a technical way. Mm-hmm. You know, people have to, but it was always on our this shadow on our shoulders, and it was to see the Israeli flags and some American flags, and this tenacity Jews and Israelis have of like, we'll sit here until you give us what we want, and we want our people back, and they're back, and we'll get to a second why, who, but to give you an honest answer, because, you know, I said before, I follow you, and I think there's a whole intellectual aspect to what you bring. It's not just, you don't just want emotions, you want the real stuff. So honestly, and it was also, I was pissed. I was pissed going today. I was really upset. I was upset because, what the fuck? It's 2025, and there are thousands of Jews in Tel Aviv. Instead of celebrating and being at the beach and just continuing our normal life, we're celebrating Jews, people who were in the underground for 700 days after losing 914 soldiers. Like, I find it very hard to imagine it with other countries and in different, like, what are we doing wrong that every every decade? Like, I found it, honestly, it was a very proud and happy moment, and I found it very sad and humiliating. That's the truth.
Thank you for your honesty. I think that's been a lot of the problem when you see it from the American perspective. So I'm here in America, so I see a lot of the kind of the American political angle of it, and it's celebrating the agreement. It's celebrating as if peace has been achieved. When, of course, if you look at actual Israeli-Palestinian history, it's never a peace agreement. It's usually a pause until the next blow up or the next event, the next inevitable event. Because if you look at what Hamas is doing in Gaza right now, you know, they're murdering dissidents, they're murdering rival clans. Mr. FO was finally actually killed, it looks like. So it's just like the Hamas propaganda has taken a bit of a hit there. But this is not the reality of it is never what you see through the White House or through the American news media. It's always much more raw, and it's always much more, I think, nuanced and complicated. I think it points to what you touched on, which is the double standard that's always applied to Jews, where, again, as you said, if this was any other country, the attitude towards the whole war would have been completely different, unrecognizably different. But the idea that this is victory, it's obviously a victory for those hostages and their families and for the country who have got those hostages back. But what it has cost to get here and where we go from here, that this is not over, the way that has become normal, I think, says so much about this so-called conflict. I think even calling it a conflict is an abusive
100%.
language.
100%. It's not a conflict.
And so I think that's really what leads me to what I wanted to try and dig into today, is because over here, a lot of people say Israel, they may have won the war, again, depending on what winning or losing even means, because it was a war to return hostages, which is what they've done, and also to subdue Hamas. But that now they've pivoted. They've pivoted to two things. The first is talking about genocide over and over and over again. You've seen all of the ceasefire now people who are suddenly very, very quiet now that there's a ceasefire, because they don't want a ceasefire. They want Israel to ceasefire. Very different. But then there's also the idea that Israel may have won the war, but they've lost the PR war, that public opinion has turned against Israel. Now, again, if you're Jewish or Israeli and you've paid attention to this more than 5 minutes, PR was never in favor of Israel. The world media was never in favor of Israel. So this isn't even a battle that I think people particularly care about. But as someone who speaks Israel worldwide on this issue, what do you think about the PR war? Is it something you even care about? Or is this something that I think, or you think, could be changed moving forward?
Love your questions. You have to think before you answer.
Those are the worst ones.
Two things. I'll start from the end. I'll start from the emotional. There's an emotional answer and there's a rational answer. Emotionally, me and you know, and many Israelis and many Jews, that no matter what we do, you know, and the first day we celebrated a country as a state, which was given to us by 33 countries in the UN. We didn't take it from anyone. The first day, they started war with us. 5 countries. Then they tried again. They lost, and they tried again in 67, in 73, and 85. They said to us that we'll always be an aggressive country, that will never sign a peace agreement. False. We signed with Egypt, our biggest enemy, with Jordan, Dubai. We gave up land in the disengagement. I think no matter what we do, Ian, no matter what the Jewish state of Israel does, no matter what Jews in America, in London, all over the world will succeed in their neighborhoods and respect to their country, and open brackets, every shul in England says praise to the Queen. Every shul in the United States, shul is a synagogue for people who don't know, has an American flag. Every demonstration they did for Israel was with the flags of their country. We have so much respect to the countries who bring us in. And I'm not even going to talk about the amount of success that we bring to culture. Leonard Cohen, Paul Simon, Steven Spielberg, Barbara Streisand, Einstein, whatever. Emotionally, I feel that no matter what we'll do, even if we're punched in our face and in our stomach, and then we punch back, the world is like, hey. Yeah. Maybe if you punch back, can you do it a bit softer and not to the teeth, maybe up here, and I honestly feel that if on October 7th they would destroy the country, and if without the Nova, maybe they would have succeeded, or destroy 50% of it and burn half of the country. I think the world would be astonished, sad, and a week later they would continue drinking their champagne in the streets of Berlin, fish and chips in London, and in New York the liberals would say, it was a wonderful country, maybe we should have defended them, and continue their life. So emotionally, no matter what we do, I don't think we'll ever be respected, fairly criticized. I think intellectual honesty has gone away from the world. Mm-hmm. I think people feel that if they say two words, free Palestine, they're already a group. They're accepted in the group of not just now I'm a vegan. Now I don't use plastic. Now I'm morally above everyone because I just said two words in a country I've never. So emotionally, no, I don't think there's anything we could do. We have to stick to ourselves. With our Jewish brothers and sisters in America, in London, and many more, we have to understand that we are alone with specific friends. Now, rationally, and I'll try to be shorter on this one, I think Israel should be ashamed, and I'm pretty right-wing, Ian, but our government should be ashamed that they don't come up to people like you and like Sami Yehud, and like what's his name, Rudy Rachber, and Ben Shapiro, and Shabbos Kestenbaum, and all these people, Douglas Murray. The government needs to help you. The government needs to help you with tools, with followers, with budget, with flights, with knowledge, to continue sharing the way you're doing in such a courageous way, sharing the truth about Israel and the Jewish people. And everything is individually. Sure, a few people help you, but I think we have neglected the Israel advocacy front line, and the only people who are doing it who are brave, who have the time, who are talented, and it's not fair because there are thousands more who need to be in the front line of advocacy. We've neglected it, and like I said, thanks to people like you and many more others, we still have a voice, but we are losing and we are being defeated.
I think what's been really interesting for me is I see a lot of people on social media who are advocates on either side. And a lot of the accusations are really funny. Like, oh, every time you make a pro-Israel post, it's because the latest thing is you're being paid $7,000. Now, I've checked my bank account. I've yet to receive a single $7,000 check. So maybe Mossad is dragging their feet. I don't know. But the fact is that all of the pro-Israel advocacy I see is for free. Whereas a lot of the pro-Palestinian or pro-Hamas stuff is obviously paid. It's obviously paid by Qatar, Russia, Iran. There's so much money coming in on the other side that people are just ignoring. So I think it is a matter of money, but I also think it's a matter of attitude, where I think there's a lot of people who are oversimplifying this, where there are a lot of people who put complex, nuanced conversations out there, but there's also a lot of people who say, Israel good, the end. That's not going to convince anyone. If you already agree that Israel is the good in this fight between good and evil, which it obviously is, then you're not going to be changed by that statement. But there's a lot of people who need to be reached who are seeing the videos coming out of Gaza, whether or not they're real, whether or not they're manipulated, they are seeing them and they're having a visceral emotional reaction. Those people need to be reached with kind of the detail and the context and the nuance of war is terrible, but here's how we got here. War is terrible, but this is what Hamas is doing to put civilians in harm's way. And I think a lot of times we're stuck in this, the phrase facts don't care about your feelings. There's a lot of American Jews or American political commentators who just say, well, yeah, Hamas is evil. I don't need to get in the weeds of this. Unfortunately, we do, because if you leave that, then you leave it open to the people who will present Hamas as the freedom fighters. I go to college campuses, and I got into an argument with a college professor who stood there and said that Hamas were freedom fighters. This is a view, and I tore him to pieces for it, but this is a view that a lot of people have. And it's not enough to say Hamas is evil. You have to explain exactly why. And I think that's where we're failing as well.
Yeah, I think it's much more simple. I think that after your famous video, I think you should have been getting a call from the Ministry of Diaspora and the guy who fights anti-Semitism in the Knesset and say, how can we help you do another video? Or how can we make it reach not 100,000 views, 1 million views? Mm-hmm. It's so important when someone with a good English who doesn't live in Israel, it's so important. And hopefully if I ever go back to the Knesset after working there for 2 years, I promised myself I will focus in helping all these individuals who are fighting. It's not with green uniforms in Gaza, but they're fighting for us. You're fighting for us, and you should get the tools and the aid you need. And like I said, I wouldn't say ashamed, but it's sad that we're not investing in that war.
It's pretty strange. I don't want to talk about me personally, but it's pretty strange when you see how effective Israel is in so many ways, how effective militarily, the strategy and the logistical and the organization and just the attitude of the people you have to have in that military to be willing to do what the IDF is constantly willing to do, to be so ruthlessly effective in that way. You've seen some of the espionage stuff, like the Hezbollah beepers was just incredible to see. But then you look at this PR war that people keep talking about, the social media war, the amount of successes that the pro-Palestinian side has had just on social media, just the amount of content they put out, the lies they constantly put out, the very high-profile people they've clearly gained access to, the Tucker Carlsons of the world, the Candace Owens of the world, the Glenn Greenwalds of the world, all of these people 24/7 are pushing anti-Israel stuff. And I always say, I'm not pro-Israel because I'm pro-Israel. I'm pro-Israel, one, because I'm Jewish, but also because I think this isn't about Israel. This is about the fact that Israel is a Jewish country. That's the only reason anyone cares. If Israel, instead of having a Star of David on the flag, had some kind of Islamic symbol, or it was an African country, no one would care. No one would have even heard of Israel, because this stuff is happening in Africa. It's happening elsewhere in the Middle East. People don't care. But there's just not this drive behind the social media war. And that's where a lot of these things are happening. Because when I go to college campuses and I talk with people, they say, oh, Israel's committing genocide. And they are so sure of it. And I ask them why they think that. It's always because they saw a very convincing video where they saw a lot of horrible images, because war is horrible. But that's it. That's the basis of their knowledge. And it doesn't matter how successful Israel is on the battlefield. When you have an increasing number of people, especially in the new generation, who are watching what's happening in the Middle East through a very, very controlled lens and seeing Israel as this Nazi-style occupation force and all these horrible words they use to describe Israel falsely, what's going to happen in the next generation when those people are in government and those people are deciding international policy? It's really scary.
Agreed. And I could say that the radical Islam and parts of Islam always never lose an opportunity to start well and end the opposite. They think that everything will be okay, and they don't. Consequences. If a doctor from London who is religiously Muslim and is totally English, sounds British, speaks British, he is a semi-intellectual, and is being called by the broadcaster about Sharia law in the hospitals and in general, and he's starting to, fump it. He's giving her... I think the Europeans and parts of America understand that there's some issues that maybe Israel is right about, and maybe they should be careful. They just can't say it. Yeah. They can't say it on their... when they go to church, they can't say it on their golf club conversation. They can't say it between their colleagues. I think people are smart, and on one hand, it's very scary, and I agree with you. On the other hand, the world knows that what they did to Charlie Hebdo, they shot him in the face. The world knows that they came into a stadium France and shot 99 people, or in Nice, in the name of Allah, he took a truck, the driver, and ran 29 people or 28. I think you'll be seeing in the next few years a lot of rallies similar to the one we saw in England with Tony Robinson. I think you're going to see many more countries claiming their flag. And I think you're going to see many more people in the close future saying, maybe it's not so black and white.
Mm-hmm. And I think, again, that's an opportunity for Israel to promote itself, because at the center of this is the idea of diversity and multiculturalism and all these nonsense words. But Israel is the diverse country in the Middle East. Israel is the multicultural country in the Middle East. And so even if you use their own weapons against them, Israel should be this shining beacon. I mean, there's a gay pride parade in Tel Aviv. There's not one in Gaza City. I mean, the LGBTQ for Palestine stuff is just ridiculous. But all of these things are opportunities.
It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah,
and when you give lies an opportunity to grow, don't be surprised that in Harvard and Yale, you're starting to see dishonesty and fake. And I don't know who's getting money there, but I don't know. Nobel Prize winners, the contribution to culture, the atomic bomb that stopped the war. There are so many things that no one's been talking about now. And every time they say, let's boycott Israel, it's always, let's boycott the chocolates or the soda streams. Yeah. But it's never the cell phones. It's never the medicine stuff. And it's so sophisticated and it's so ridiculous. And honestly, sometimes it breaks my heart to see a video of Candace Owen, 7 million people. A video that is totally false, or Bassem Youssef, the Egyptian comedian, who's just another 20 seconds, totally lies, and 1 million likes, and I'm like, you're lying, you're fucking lying. Let's have a debate. Let's speak. You were never in this country. I've been here for 37 years. I grew up with Muslims, with Jews, with Christians. Speak to us. Come and visit to us. But it's so easy on a platform to say Israel's committing a genocide and now the IDF soldiers are raping. And I'm like, it's the shekel. Yeah. It's unbelievable. You're lying. And you know you're lying. And for what? You know what you're going to gain from this in the long term? Nothing. We're not going anywhere. Israel is not going anywhere. Tel Aviv's not going anywhere. You've tried so many times since 1948. And like I said, it breaks my heart, but I think that radical waves create radicals waves. I think you're going to see a lot of backlash to radical Islams in the next few years.
And I think that itself, in some ways, is a problem, because a backlash is good, but it also depends how the backlash is done. And what worries me is that you see the only people who are actually willing to stand up and push back now, it's starting to change, but for a long time, it was the so-called far right, for example. And so then people would dismiss legitimate concerns because they go, oh, it's just the far right saying that. But now you look at what's happening in the UK and some parts of America, it's not the so-called far right, it's mainstream people who are fed up with what's happening. But you've still got the political class clinging to this. Like in England, you've got people saying like waving the English flag is a far right dog whistle. I'm sorry, what? Doesn't make any sense. The flag of your country is a dog whistle, but the flag of someone else's country who wants to destroy every single value you have is not. Explain that to me.
You know what gave me hope? Being in Nashville, in Alabama, meeting Americans, middle class, upper class, lower class Christians in that area, people who are proud of their country, people who are hardworking, people who are, I met a truck driver in a gas station. He saw my star in David. He was, this massive guy, truck driver. I spoke to him for 3 minutes. This guy, his father fought his grandfather fought in Second World War, loves America. He had what to say about Israel, but he had more knowledge about the conflict than any professor in Harvard in the last 10 years. In 3 minutes, I was so impressed, not because he was pro-Israel. The way he spoke, the basic knowledge of what we're fighting. and meeting so many people in Nashville, not just the Jewish community in that wonderful, wonderful shul. I forgot its name, but just the average American I met there. It was so. I felt that they get us. They understand what we're fighting, and they understand that this is way, way, way bigger than the IDF versus Gaza. This is the free world fighting for its values against radical Islam, which is not 2 million people. You know what? You want to be politically correct, Ian? There are 1 billion Muslims, 1.5 billion, 900 million are good people. We have 100 million, 50 million. Al Qaeda, ISIS, Boko Haram, Taliban. Every time it's someone else. Until every pub is going to become a mosque, until me and you become Muslim, either they'll chop our head off, and no one could write, draw, say anything about Islam. They're paying $1 million. Dave Chappelle, another motherfucker, who is being paid $1 million to go to their area and to give a comedy show, but he's not allowed to make fun of Islam. What's this bullshit? When is it? This is serious stuff, and we're going to pay for it if we don't stand for it. And Israel and the Jews in diaspora are the first ones to fight this.
I think what's really fascinating is the divide I always find. The people you spoke with in America, especially in the South, who were not just pro-Israel, but understood the conflict. You can almost guarantee that everyone who remembers 9/11 understands this conflict for what it is. They understand precisely what radical Islam is about, the relentlessness, the shamelessness, the pure bloodthirstiness. Everyone who is young enough to not remember 9/11 doesn't get it, because that level of evil, if you live in the West and you're soft and squishy and you've always been safe and you think everyone is like you, like the world is Epcot Center where everyone is the same except we wear slightly different clothes and we eat slightly different food, but everyone is the same, everyone has the same values. If that is your worldview, because that is the view of the world you've had after 9/11, where we didn't have any radical Islamic attacks in America of that scale, thank goodness, then you are such a victim to this lie. And you are the next generation of victims. I think that's a failure, too, of conservatives in America, but just pro-Americans in institutions, is we've allowed the legacy of 9/11 to fade away. 9/11 is not that long ago in the grand scheme of things, but the impact of it has really faded. And I think a lot of people now do not understand the truth and the evil behind radical Islam that we're dealing with.
Do you feel, Ian, like I know you're the guy who's doing the interview here, but I'm because I feel we're in an open conversation, and I see Stav is joining us. So just before,
hello.
I'm curious, Ian, from your side, how do you see it when it comes to what are you worried about in your everyday as a Jew in America? Do you feel that your neighbors who are not Jewish, your colleagues, understand what we're fighting, or is it, or do you feel by yourself? I'm very curious to hear what you have been feeling as an individual in your area, in the other side of the world.
I feel generally safe when I'm around conservative Americans and religious Americans. When I go to cities and I go to college campuses or just the regular streets of a city, that's when I start to get nervous. Because one, you don't have the right to defend yourself as you do in the South, for example. So Tennessee is a concealed carry state. So people tend to be carrying guns at all times. But you go to somewhere like New York, you're not allowed to defend yourself. And you've got people who are, say, visibly Jewish being attacked city streets across the country. And that's when I feel worried. I don't feel worried for myself necessarily because I take my security very seriously and I tend to be very careful where I go. Like when I do college speeches, for example, I have security there. I feel very worried about the left wing or the liberal Jews who are stuck in this safe bubble, who do not understand the world. I look at them in the same way as the Jews in the 1920s and the early 1930s in Europe, who saw what was happening. You can't predict the Holocaust, but you can certainly predict that things are not going well right now. You can see Jews being beaten in the street, and you can see the mainstream media making excuses for it. You can see in Manchester, Jews being stabbed to death outside of a synagogue and by a guy from Syria whose actual name was Jihad. and people scratching their chins and going, well, what could possibly be behind this? That's what scares me.
Thanks for sharing.
Welcome, Stav. I'm so
Hey,
glad
how
you
you
made
doing,
it.
guys?
Dressed up, making us look like trash, but appreciate you being here.
Well, when Yehuda talks, he make me look like trash. So clothing is the only weapon I have.
Shalom, achi.
Shalom, achshali.
So just to catch you up, we've been talking about the agreement today. We'd love to get your thoughts on that, and also on the PR war that a lot of people are talking about. So now that the beloved ceasefire that so many of the ceasefire now people have been talking about has been achieved, they've all gone very quiet. And the next attack has been that Israel is committing genocide still, or that Israel has lost the PR war. So I guess 3 questions there, just to catch you up with where we were, is one, what does today feel like after over 2 years of horror? And then I guess 2 questions. How do we deal with the PR issue that many people are accusing Israel of having failed?
Well, I think today, man, today is a mixed feelings day. On one hand, you're getting 20 live hostages back, 20 lost souls, 20 people that for over 2 years actually been through the worst things that human being can possibly imagine. On the other hand, that thrill and enthusiasm will turn into international grief as soon as those 28 coffins will make their ways inside of Israel. I don't think that the international and the Israeli media has covered enough, not merely a quarter of what you should, of the prices that we're paying. Meaning, how many? First and foremost, how many terrorists are going out there? Who are they? What is their status? Are they symbols? Are they experienced? Which relationships do they have with which countries? What are their plans for the nearest future? So as you can tell, I think that we have 4 of the most senior terrorists that are staying inside of the Israeli prison, which is great. But all of the rest of them, which is nearly 1,000 terrorists, are on their way to commit the next October 7th attack. And one last thing, maybe, when people are hearing the term October 7th, they're thinking about just a few hours of the most brutal massacre, right? But they're seeing it as a few hours incident. Whereas in Judea and Samaria, I claim that you're experiencing October 7th ever since Eskemei Oslo, ever since the 90s, right? Because you have here 3 people that got murdered. There you have Tzala Gez, a mother with a pregnant mother with she buried her child. She was on her way to give birth. And of course, she got murdered on her way to the hospital in Judea and Samaria, because October 7th is way more than just a day, although it was 3 days back at a time. And I worry about the next attack. And my personal feelings is, although we achieved the most important, valuable goal that we can have as we have like a mandatory obligation for those hostages to get them back, we also have mandatory obligation to make sure that the Israel story won't keep going. The Israel story is very simple. You can tell it in 10 seconds. My grandfathers survived Auschwitz, then fought in the 1948 war. My dad fought in the 1973 Yom Kippur War. I fought in Gaza when I was 18 in 2014, and then again in 2023, October 7th. So there you have it. That's the Israeli story. If we want to end it once and for all, we have to look not 10 feet ahead, but 15 years ahead and ask ourselves, how can we take out the bad plan from the root, if it makes sense. Yeah.
Do you think there is an answer there? Because I talk about anti-Semitism more than I talk about Israel, for example, because one is related to the other. And I try and make it more accessible to Americans and American Jews by focusing on anti-Semitism. But whenever people ask me what is the solution to anti-Semitism, my answer is always there isn't one. You've just got to build a world where you are kept as safe as possible from it, and you are prepared to defend yourself against it. So do you think there is an answer to what is happening right now? Obviously, things like the Abraham Accords are really exciting when we're having some normalization of relations between Israel and countries that 5 minutes ago wanted to wipe it off the face of the map. I don't see Gaza and Judea and Samaria signing the Abraham Accords anytime soon. So do you think there is an actual, I'll go to Yehuda first and then Stav. Do you think there is an actual solution here? Or do you think this is trying to just get the rest of the world to understand that this is like a constant maintenance problem? This isn't like we fight a war. This isn't like a World War II situation where we fight Nazism, we fight Imperial Japan. We win, we dust our hands off, the world is rebuilt, and then we just move on. I don't see it that way, but I would love to hear what you think.
I think that unless we start digging in every normal country, Western normal country, into the mosques and hearing very carefully what they're saying there to their young people, we will always be surrounded. Israel by enemies. Europe is in their last days of the freedom that my father growing up in London knows, and you know also better than I do. But the bottom line, Ian, is no. I think that the only countries that are business oriented, like Dubai, who care about sending their kids, if they have money, to education, and not to kill Jews like Osama bin Laden did, even though he was a multimillionaire again. I think we will always continue having a radical Islam, crazy, murderous, bloodthirsty. We're just step A. Israel is step A. Israel is the tachana rishona lifnei harbe tachanot. It's the first step. They're sitting down now in their mosque and saying, these Europeans, these Americans, Israel is just the first step. We're going after them. They did it with Charlie Hebdo. They did it in London. They did it with the World Trade Center. And they're so amazed how quick people forget. So the answer on my behalf is, until we don't, like Stav said before, the idea, it's not a fighting war, tanks against tanks. That's the simple way of winning it. How do I know the kid who's being released now and he's 15 doesn't become the next Nukhba? Yeah. I don't.
What do you think, Stav?
I think two things. First of all, the terms agreement, peace, solution, those are all Western terms that doesn't align with Middle East society. Here, it's a desert society, and it's all about tribes. And if you have here in the Middle East, if you have someone that is not afraid of you, then you better start afraid of them. And Hamas wasn't afraid of us. This is why they committed October 7th. And Hezbollah wasn't afraid of us. This is why they committed. This is why they joined the party. Although they're late, but on October 8th, you had the first Cornet missile that been shot inside Israel, and the Houthis and Iran, and etc., etc. So I see this agreement as just as Sisi, the president of Egypt, just the way he sees it. And he said, and I quote, you, meaning you Israel, you the Western world, you're doing peace agreements in order to get to your result, because this is the result that you want to achieve. I do peace agreements because this is just merely a tool in order to get to my true end goal, which is not a secret, never was, the destruction of the state of Israel, the spread of radical Islam all across Israel as the first stop, just like Yehuda said, and then of your hometown in the UK, and then in the States. And it actually happens, but it happens with suits and ties, with Mamdani in New York City, or with Queen English level at Piers Morgan's show, with people that are actually advocating for terrorism, taking mistakes that IDF is committed, and we are doing mistakes, as if there were like something that could represent how we actually fight in the battlefield. So to me, I feel it's a day of mixed feelings.
Yeah. I want to touch on that a bit more, because I think at the heart of a lot of that propaganda, of the idea that Israel is committing war crimes or is committing genocide or is intentionally killing children, all of this kind of stuff. At the heart of it are two problems. Is one, that people don't understand the reality of war, that war is quite literally hell, and there is no way to carry out a war where people don't get hurt. There has not been a war in history where civilians have not been hurt, and there has also not been a war in history where a lower ratio of civilians have been hurt than this one. And so what I find so bizarre is, not bizarre, but also indicative of how powerful the anti-Israel propaganda machine is you can have an army that is as careful as Israel, that makes the American army and the British army and European armies and any army in the history of the world look absurd. Like the number of civilians who were killed in World War I, World War II, in the Iraq War, the number of civilians that have been droned randomly by the American military, and people don't even look up from their breakfast. But then you've got Hamas, who have made the murder of children, because it is murder when we're talking about Hamas, because they are intentionally placing children in harm's way. And that is flipped as to murder committed by Israel. That is the battle I'm trying to have, of trying to convince people that war is terrible. You cannot have a war where there are no civilian casualties. But it is so hard to get people to answer that question. How do you have a war without civilian casualties when one side, Hamas and the other Palestinian terrorist organizations, they benefit from every civilian death? How do you fight that war? I don't think there's an answer to it. You cannot fight that war. You're fighting with two hands tied behind your back because civilian deaths are guaranteed. How have you dealt with that when that question comes up?
I'll jump real quick and I'll give it to Yehuda. I'll just say the first sentence. What you do is what Yehuda taught me to do. You switch from defense to offense. Right, Yehuda? How are we going to do that?
100%. I think, Ian, the world doesn't know how to deal, with a successful minority, going back to anti-Semitism. And we've been so good living in diaspora in America and England and caring about, and no matter what, we are always shown the back and reminded, you're not really welcome here. That's number one. Number two, the world doesn't understand. It's hard for them to see a Jew in an F-35. It's hard for them to see a Jew in an elite unit like Stav and Duvdevan. They don't understand why there's an Israeli flag on a tank, because they're used to their grandparents saying, oh, remember those Jews who lived where my grandparents lived in Feuchtwagen or Munich? And then we fucking killed them. We took them out of their house and we put them in concentration camps, and that wasn't enough. We gassed them. And they dared 6 years later to build a country, and a successful country, and an army, and to win. That's what's going on here. They're not used to us winning. They're not used to us fighting. They're not used to us saying, no matter what, we will go in 1,000 more times whenever, wherever they need us. You have two people here who are vouch for that. And I know, Ian, that you're the same. You're not wearing the green uniform and fighting with the IDF, but you're a fighter. I think you're a Jewish fighter and you're doing your best to protect us. So they're not used to it. They're used to us being so apologetic. Yeah. And so just see us as the way you see, and we're done with it. We're done. And when we succeed, and no matter what we do, and no matter how we are gentle and we fight back gently, the three of us and many people in the world know that in 3 days we could have ended the war.
I think that's what's really bizarre and difficult for me to try and get across over here, is because if you look at October 7th and the immediate reaction, everyone was appalled. Because Jews were playing that part, right? Jews were playing the part of the people being dragged out of their homes, being raped in the street, being cut up, being burned, being kidnapped. And everyone would say, yeah, that's terrible, because Jews were fitting nicely in that box of the victim. The waiting around, helplessly being cut apart by whoever the enemies of that day were. But people are very, as you said, very comfortable with the Jewish victim. Literally the day Jews started fighting back, then you started hearing the words that this has to be a proportional response. They can't go too far. They can't do this. They can't do that. This is how the world needs to change. This is what American Jews need to realize, is that people are comfortable with us being victims, but also there are so many, I'll just talk about American Jews and British Jews and Western Jews generally, because Israeli Jews are very, very different. every other Western Jew, I think, they are too comfortable with that victim. If they think if I'm quiet enough, if I stand back enough, if I don't make enough noise, if I apologize for being Jewish, if I say, well, I'm Jewish, but I don't like Netanyahu. Who cares what you think about Netanyahu? I don't care. They don't care. Do you think for example, in Manchester, when a terrorist showed up at a synagogue on Yom Kippur to kill Jews, do you think he was going down the line asking them what their political views were? Like, what are your thoughts before I stab you in the chest outside a synagogue? What are your thoughts on Netanyahu? They do not care. Our enemies do not care. All they care about is that Star of David. That's all they care about. Not what our political views are, not how we vote, not who we donate to, none of that. And I think people need to wake up and understand that. I think Israeli Jews understand that. I would love for the rest of the world's Jews to wake up and understand that too.
So Yehuda and I have this new service that we offer. It's called Wake Up Alarm. We're going to go... I'm kidding, right? But we are starting these days an organization that will get soldiers, reservists from Gaza, from Rafah to DC, to New York, to LA, to San Francisco, to Austin, Texas, and actually give an authentic testimony. Skip the studios, skip the narrative, skip the so-called expertise who know nothing of the sort, that never held an M16 in their hands, never got shot by someone who wears civilian clothes. By the way, Hamas is the only army in this world who wears civilian clothes in the battlefield, and actually all of a sudden they have uniforms when Al Jazeera cameras are coming out during the ceasefire. But those reservists, that Yehuda and I will send out, they're gonna fight. They're gonna attack just like they defend Israel in Gaza. They're going to defend the entire Jewish nation, in our opinion, the free world. And we're going to make a revolution in the hasbara, in the civil diplomacy, as we call it, world.
I just want to say in one sentence that I feel, Ian, also after meeting you and Nashville, and I think, to conclude what Stav is saying, I think Jewish Israelis are starting to move from defense to offense. I think we saw it with the beepers in Lebanon. I think with Iran, who the whole world was convincing us, don't fight them. They're much stronger and bigger than you. And and then we did what we did to them. And I want to say two things. Absolutely. Israelis who fought there, who've seen it with their own eyes, I think could be the best advocate fighter. And also people like you, Ian, and many other Jews. I think it's time for everyone to move from defense and offense. I think it's time for everyone to stop putting their Star in David before they go to shul and doing this, or putting their yarmulke on the pocket, or changing their Jewish name on Uber. It's time for us to be proud of our Jewish identity, not hide it. It's time for us to be proud of our connection to Israel and not fump it when they're saying, where are you going next year? And I know you're doing that, but there are many, many Jews who are they just want to be left alone, and I'll be okay. But no, everyone has to move from defense and from defense to offense, and we're starting, and we're inviting mostly now Israeli soldiers to come to this new thing, and hopefully we'll work together on many different projects because the world is still asleep.
I would love that. I can't think of a better way to end. Yeah.
What?
And we need the end, I'm saying.
And I want to say something to Stav, because I think there are two people here. The both of you, Ian, that video of yours, when I see it a lot, that's offense for me. But when I met Stav in Nashville in Alabama, and it was the first time we actually did stuff together in advocacy, Stav brought a much stronger Israeli approach than I did. I grew up, with American parents. My father's English, but it was much more apologetic, gentle, correct, and I think what I learned from Stav, and you're not supposed to say good things when people are in front of you, but he brought this this Israeli hardcore mentality with an FU attitude that I decided, and I feel that everyone needs to, from 10 years old in 6th grade to the 12 years old to college students to grandparents, we have to start fighting radical Islam, and it's not going to be an easy battle.
I think we should leave it there. I couldn't say it better myself. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming on. You're both a huge inspiration to me. It's really easy to sit here and only deal with screens and talking with college students. To actually see what you're both doing is always so motivating and so moving. I hope you can both come on again soon. I really want to make more of this, more of a regular conversation. It's been far too long, I think, since we spoke. So let's make it more of a regular thing, because I think more people need to hear your voices. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Ian. We're proud of you.
Pleasure.
Continue the good work. Damn it. Thank you also. Tack så